Once again, we've got kind of a not so fun topic to talk about, but we are going to talk about it. Unlike anybody else in our industry, we're going to talk about license issues with the state board today. It's just an important topic, one that we had to address with Travel Evolve, one that's important to listen to. We're going to talk a lot about some fun stuff toward the end of this one, but today on Travel Evolve, we're going to talk about licensure issues with the state board on this week's edition of Travel Evolved. This is Travel Evolved. I'm Mark Holloway. Welcome to the episode, everybody. Really glad to have you on board today. Yeah, like I said in the intro here, this isn't a fun one to talk about, but like always, with our series, our show, our YouTube channel, our podcast, our Facebook group, we're not going to shy away from any issue. Here's a good example of an issue that I will tell you that nobody wants to openly talk about. I mean, you guys do, which I think is wonderful and important. There are pages, groups, there's definitely other YouTube channels and podcasts that talk about this sort of thing, and I love that. But what's interesting, and I want you to really think about this, when's the last time you heard an agency or a CEO or a rep or a recruiter from an agency really openly having a full discussion about issues with the state board? It's just one of those things that nobody wants to talk about anything negative in our industry because they're salespeople. Every one of us, including me, from the CEO to a recruiter and everybody in between, our entire existence in being in a travel agency working, I don't care if you're in credentialing or if you're an account manager, it's to convince you, the traveler, to go to work for us. So nobody's going to say anything that has anything to do with anything negative. God, I can't even speak today. We just don't want to talk about it. We're just going to put our heads in the sand and just pretend no one has it, but yet this stuff is pretty common. I mean, it just is what it is. I'll throw it out there now and I'll mention it again. I mean, addiction and things like that are commonplace in our industry. You guys have access to stuff that I don't have access to. Let's be frank. And unfortunately, that creates, some problems for a lot of folks that have those sorts of personalities that are attracted to that sort of thing. It just is. I'm not just talking about addictions, by the way, with issues with the state board. I'm talking about everything from clinical issues. And again, this is not just a nursing episode. Anybody that has any sort of certification or that is, has to have a license that can be revoked based upon performance or something along the lines of that we're going to talk about today, shortages, all those different things. Nobody wants to address it because it just is hard to talk about. You guys know me. I'll talk about anything because I think it's important. And this is one of those that we put on the board a long time ago, a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. And we said we got to do this because it's important just to throw out there. I wouldn't feel good about having an entire series if this episode didn't exist on our platform and our show. So we're doing it. And I'm not looking forward to this episode, but I hope there's some things that make you guys think out there. I really do hope that we can help somebody. I mean, I've always said that, whether it's right now when this episode airs or 2 or 3 or 5 years down the road when this thing is hopefully still being shown on different social media, that somebody, and I know it will happen. I know in my heart of hearts that somebody will go, it'll help somebody to maybe avoid having an issue with a state license or state certification. If we accomplish that on this episode, man, success, right? It really is. So, I mean, this could be a short episode. It actually is going to be relatively short. I think you can probably tell by that. We're going to add some things about Next Gen Med Staff at the end, some really cool things I'm excited about. So listen to all this and get to some of the fun and good stuff toward the end. I mean, I could end this episode by saying don't do stupid stuff, right? Don't do things that are going to put your license in jeopardy. That would be an easy and simple solution to an entire episode that clearly wouldn't be giving justification to the incredible amount of people that actually do end up having issues and having problems with being able to continue their career based upon one or numerous state board issues. So, like I said, we're always going to tackle things that I just think need to be talked about openly, and this episode is that. So here's how I'll start the episode out. I've been in this industry now, I can say this, 23 plus years. As of Thanksgiving, roughly, of 2023. In Thanksgiving of 2020, I spent on Long Island, New York, in a hotel with about 250 of my closest nursing friends, as we had Thanksgiving dinner in 2 or 3 groups as people were going to work that Plainview strike in Nyack so many years ago, 23 years ago. I still have friends to this day that I met 23 years ago when I first was so nubile and so green and eyes wide open. It was such a wild time looking back. I can't believe I survived it. But I did, and it brought me to where I am today. So 23 years in the industry, where I'm going with this is that I've seen it all. I've seen more than some of you guys have, believe it or not, because I've just been doing this for so long, and I've become such good friends with so many different travelers from allied to nursing that I've kind of heard it all. I mean, every once in a while I get like, what? Not very often anymore. There's a similar story I heard 20 years ago or 10 years ago, but I've heard it all. And unfortunately, in our industry, this is common. I mean, again, I'm not telling you guys something you don't know. There is mistakes that can be made clinically that can haunt you or destroy your entire career. That stinks. Last time I checked, if someone, let's say, is working for me who's a credentialing specialist makes a mistake, it's not going to destroy their career unless I destroy their career, which I wouldn't be able to destroy their career. I could fire somebody for making a mistake. But a state board or a certification that you've worked your entire life for, or many, many years if you're young and new in this game, can be destroyed like that with a simple clinical mistake, a lapse in judgment, certainly an issue with a narcotic. And again, I hate to harp on that, but it is a thing that I want to address. I'm not going to stick my head in the sand and pretend that we're not talking about a big part of what I'm talking about today has to do with that, because it does. And not everybody that's listening to our podcast and YouTube channel does have access to those sorts of things, but a lot of you do. So all of these areas, a career can be destroyed in a second, in an instant. And it's real. I've seen it. I'm not, this isn't something that I've just heard about. I've watched careers be destroyed. I know people who are, still sometimes even in the game here working around healthcare staffing, but can no longer practice their area of specialty because of these sorts of things. It's tough stuff, and we're all human. There's no judgment whatsoever on this episode. There just isn't. People have different, what's the word I want to look for? Not vices, but people have different things that they have different levels of strength on certain things. I don't care if it's a gambling addiction, a pornography addiction, a narcotic addiction, smoking, overeating. We're all human. So for somebody to pass judgment on somebody because of this, number one, is terrible. It's not fair. And I do believe that people should have opportunities to redeem themselves, should get second chances if they truly have learned lessons on things. Listen, I've made mistakes, trust me, and I've had second opportunities to fix those and improve upon them. I'm working on one right now, and I love it. And it's such a wonderful life that you can do that sort of thing, and you can have mistakes and be like, wow, but look how much better I can do on some things. And this applies to these sorts of things, whether it's clinical or something else. We're all human. So let me just throw that out there and say that this stuff is, you're not alone. If you have that, if you've had it, you're not alone. So please know that. I don't want to make any judgments on this stuff. This is not about that. It's about what do you do, how do you avoid it, and how do you fix it. That's what we're going to talk about today. This will affect your travel career. If you are prone to having clinical issues, documentation issues, charting issues, if you're prone to having a weakness toward, having things like narcotics, or you are facilitating somebody who you care about that has that. I've seen that many times too, where it's not the traveler, it's some of the traveler cares and thinks they love, who's getting them to do things that they shouldn't be doing. It's going to affect your travel career. It's going to probably affect your entire career, as it will. It will catch up to you. It will get you. So please know that. So let's start off with that. Be hypersensitive, hyper aware that whatever it is you're dealing with, and again, I could sit there and we can talk about specifics on this episode, but I don't think we need to. If you are a lazy documentation person, you're probably in the wrong specialty. If you're a nurse and you don't document and dot your I's, cross your T's, this is going to be a short career for you. Let's be frank. I could not be an RN, a nurse practitioner, a physician's assistant, or a lot of other specialties that require meticulous documentation of what we do. It's just not my thing. I'm smart enough to know what is my thing and what's not my thing. And if I had gotten into, let's say, nursing because I loved it, and then realized the things and the shortcomings that I have with my particular personality that wouldn't allow me to be a very successful nurse, I'd get out of it, or I would have switched careers. So if you're unfortunate enough that you have these issues, you're going to have to rise above and figure out how to be better at your job. If you're brand new, again, this is kind of a weird conversation because I don't think anyone who watches me would be in that scenario. But yet every so often I have somebody who has been brought up on and been brought to the state board because of some clinical issue. And oftentimes it is about something like that. Lack of documentation, lack of judgment. A lot of times it's lack of getting other people involved and being told to do something that isn't right, but being a little bit too afraid to buck the system and get second opinions, especially if it's coming from a level of authority. And you guys know what I mean. If someone's telling you to do something, that's not okay. How do I cover my rear end? And sometimes you don't say anything, and then it ends up being the one. Who's the one that always gets? Oftentimes you guys. You guys know this stuff. I mean, I'm not telling you something. This is what I was talking about. No one wants to talk about this, but it is the truth. Oftentimes, and I had this happen to one of our travelers a little over a year ago, where something similar to that, where she knew something wasn't right, and as a traveler, sure enough, they blamed her, and she kept asking, how come I'm doing these from these orders? These orders don't make sense. Now, as it turned out, there was no issue with state board with that particular individual, which is awesome. They were smart enough not to push the envelope too far, but she is not allowed to work for a certain system or a certain region anymore, which stinks. That's right where she lives, and she needs to fight that, which is what we're going to talk about here today. But as you guys know, the stuff flows downhill, and oftentimes you guys are the recipient of things that are fair or unfair. What I'm getting at is that it's going to follow you if you, and let's just talk about narcotics and that sort of thing for a second. If you have a problem or a weakness for that sort of thing, you'd probably need to get out of this industry sooner than later. If you have found yourself without knowing that all of a sudden, hey, I'm addicted to something here, I would urge you to get out of healthcare before it causes you legal problems or you hurt somebody. I mean, I'm just being frank and honest. And I hope that there's somebody out there that has discovered that weakness or that addiction that says he's right and does that. I don't care if it's now or in 5 years, the next 5 years. I hope that helps to either save a patient or save yourself, save some embarrassment, or save your knowledge that you need to get away from something that you have access to. And I did it. We did a whole episode. I had Jason, my friend from England, who was an addiction specialist. He came on and in the episode in the 40s. So not quite a year ago, maybe 9 months ago, and had a good discussion about this. I'd look it up. It was about addictions in healthcare, and it was episode 40 something. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but we had a good talk about it, really open, honest conversation about that sort of thing. I want you to think about the fact that you've got a lifetime ahead of you. If you can fix whatever you think is going to be a problem for you with a state board, then you're going to save a lifetime of studying, all the work you've done to get to where you are. If it's something you can't avoid, you're going to save yourself a different kind of sorrow by getting out of this industry entirely or getting away from something that could cause you some harm. And there's no shame in that. That's actually a pretty high road to take if you have an issue, along those lines. So if you need help, use this episode and use that being scared of what could happen as a potential reason to go get that help. I'll just throw it out there. There are going to be more episodes we're going to do on specific things like addiction, so I don't want to spend the whole episode talking about that. But I'll be honest, like I said before, and I've already said it a couple times, the majority, and this is a true statement of what I've experienced secondhand from what's happened to people that have worked for companies that I've ran or I've been involved in. Overwhelmingly, the majority of problems with State Board have to do with shortages and narcotic and documentation issues that involve drugs. Let's just say it like it is. So if I'm leaning heavily toward that in this episode, that's why, because that's what I've seen. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone else out there can tell me that no, most things are clinical. But what I've seen from a travel healthcare professional standpoint is that most of this stuff has to do with narcotics. So that's why I'm being so heavy on that, because I just want to I want to get it out there. So, like I say, maybe being scared of what could happen can cause you to say, maybe I should start to become a mortgage, broker or a realtor or something that's a little bit different than having access to things that I know are eventually going to destroy me and my family and a career that I could walk away from now. So I'll just throw it out there. So here's what I've also seen. For the last 23 years, I have watched travelers, and you can see it, run from this. And they can hide from issues with State Board. Unfortunately, especially nursing. I can't speak intelligently about a lot of other specialties. You guys know my bread has been buttered on nursing primarily, but I've learned an awful lot, and I think I'm just as savvy now on allied as I was on nursing over the last 3 or 4 years. I've really focused a lot on allied, so I understand the 50% of you that listen to our stuff and the 50% of you that go to work for Next Gen Med Staff. So I'm doing my best. But 20 years has all been nursing. So I've watched with nursing that you can, change your state of residency. You can, have compact states. You can go out and get another license before a ding is hit on your current license. I mean, this is pretty well documented stuff. There's cases upon cases of nurses, unfortunately, that have had major dings on one license. They went out and grabbed another one or relocated to a compact state and been working for years. And then that license gets hit, but it takes a while for nurses and some of those other systems to catch up. Now, they're getting better. It's one of the big proponents for having a national license and not having to have all this compact stuff. And it's one of the reasons why states jump into compact, because it does allow for a little bit better tracking on that sort of thing. But I do know there are still some states that are slow. So a nurse could work for a long period of time, theoretically, before that sort of thing catches up with him or her. And it's unfortunate, because you could be working alongside of somebody like that. I'm sure some of you are nodding your head going, I think I have before. Hopefully it's not you. Hopefully it's somebody you've worked alongside of. But that's a problem in industry, and I just want to kind of point out that I think that is one of the bigger, besides just the convenience of having to have one license. Now, having a national license would obviously, if you kind of look at the opposite side of the coin, if you had a problem, they'd have to fix the system to make sure that a problem anywhere would show up in the system, whatever the system is, that would instantly be able to dismiss a license so a person couldn't practice. I don't think they have that there yet. And, you guys all know, working with different states, I have to work with them all the time. Some states are just a mess. Some states are better run than others. But for the most part, any state organization, I don't care, go look up, something that, your state-gov and try to find how to register for your car or how to vote. Oh my gosh, it's incredibly cumbersome. In many states, their web designs are horrific, are terribly designed, are terribly, navigated. So imagine trying to get something where, it's universal and the whole country is all on the same page and has a great thing. I mean, we can do it, but I don't think we're there yet, but hopefully we're going to get there soon. But like what I'm getting at is that travelers can hide from this stuff. So I'm just pointing out the obvious and saying that you can hide. I want to get into what we can do first of all, but here's what I'll tell you. If it's a clinical issue, I think from what I understand mostly, and pardon my ignorance on some of this stuff, but what I've been told by a lot of travelers over the years is that clinical things that happen with the State Board are typically relatively easy to fix, to abide by a program. Sometimes you have to go and do some things. You have to jump through some hoops. Sometimes you have to attend some classes. Sometimes there's things you have to do in order to get through and get those things off your license. Listen, I had a traveler one time. I think I can say the story without saying much about it, but a really great person was, taking a picture of his or her lunch and said something like, oh gosh, I'm hitting the calories too much today, or it was something, whatever, put it on her social media thing. Well, it happened to be that she took a picture of her sandwich, and sure enough, in the corner of the picture was a patient record with, I think, most details of that patient on there. And clearly somebody, reported that. She certainly didn't. And she had to go in front of the state board for this and lost her license for a while because had to learn about the HIPAA regulations, all the different things that are here now that, just, again, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't done maliciously, but it was somebody that just wasn't thinking. With social media now, I heard this story and went, oh, God, I totally can get it. I totally understand why you would be doing that. Now, I mean, listen, people take pictures all the time of their food or themselves with stuff in the background that they don't know, or somebody in the background. And, people repost all the time on social media. It's really common. People just don't think about that sort of thing. So even something like that affected this gal's license. Now, she did get it fixed. However, for a long period of time, I think even when maybe to this day, she had to have this documentation showing what it was that caused this issue and all the steps to remediation that she had to do to get it fixed, and all the things she had to learn about it. And it was embarrassing for her because it was, I think, embarrassing because she felt silly about the fact that she wasn't paying attention. Again, this was not done specifically to be malicious. It just was it was a boo-boo, lack of better word. Well, boo-boos don't happen in your world. You guys aren't allowed to have boo-boos. I'm allowed to have them all the time, and trust me, I do. You guys are never allowed to have a boo-boo, and when you do, oh my gosh, you're in front of a state board and your entire career is on the line that you've worked your life for. And you're going, what am I going to do tomorrow if my license is pulled, or worse? And how am I going to make a living after this is what I know? It's scary, scary stuff. So just, man, keep your head on straight and keep your head prepared. But what I'm getting at is that there are oftentimes very, specific steps to fix and get things off of your record. And will say this, things like that instance, most managers and hiring authorities do understand those sorts of things. So the good news is, yeah, it's going to be a pain in the you-know-what for you for a little while. You're going to have to maybe go on permanent. You're going to have to be less marketable. And we've talked about traveler marketability. This is one of them. For a while, you may just be taking whatever you can get until time goes by. Time does heal things. And as you prove yourself and time goes on, to prove yourself, that sounds so, I don't even know what. It sounds like I'm reprimanding a kid. But as time goes by, we all know this stuff will fix itself. I've got people that have had issues on their license for 10 years ago that are still having to, every single time they interview, they have to bring this up and discuss it and make sure the manager knows so it's not an issue, after they get hired. So there are fixable things, and a lot of the clinical stuff is fixable. My recommendation is get started, get going on it, get great documentation, get it done, and keep moving on. Keep moving on past that mistake if you can. So there, I don't know. It's just tough stuff. The other thing I want to talk about here real quick is that, unfortunately, you're kind of on your own on a lot of this stuff. Again, something that not everybody's going to be willing to tell you, but, for the most part, your facility's not going to help you. Your agency's not going to help you. You're going to be on your own on this. And we did an episode, I think really recently, if it wasn't the last one, about insurance. So here's where that kind of comes into play. Malpractice insurance, all that kind of fun stuff. But you're going to be alone on this thing. So get some, I would obviously recommend some legal advice, some legal support. Don't try to do stuff on your own. It doesn't hurt to talk to somebody who is who understands medical malpractice, medical issues with state board, and have a great discussion with somebody and have somebody represent you. I would urge you to do that. That's what they get paid for, and it's just crazy to go this alone. Just my advice. When you're done with this sort of thing, whether it's, I don't care what the issue is, and you, let's say, are getting your license reinstated, hopefully, God willing, make sure you have all the documentation that you need. Obviously, I see it all the time on things like nurses. We have to send reports when someone does have a stab on their license. We have to, provide that to the facility. And, sometimes they're written terribly. Sometimes they're not so well written on your behalf. Let's put it that way. It can be pretty tough. So if you have something you want to add, or you can have a legal person draw up something that kind of shows your side of the story, so to speak, I would highly recommend that. you're again fighting for your marketability. You're again fighting for your career. I've seen this destroy travel careers and not destroy permanent careers, because let's be frank, sometimes one facility is willing to look at the information and the judgment and the fulfillment and then say, okay, I'm going to bring him or her back and we're going to have them go on board. It's tougher sometimes when you have to do this every 13 or 26 weeks, which is why so many times I've seen it end the travel career and not necessarily the healthcare professional career, which is a little bit of a silver lining. In other words, you can still use your degree and your education to make a living, which is obviously vital and important. It's just that's part of it. When you're talking about a narcotic issue, I've seen the results be significantly less optimistic of having this fix your career. So this is where I'm going to say, as a friend, as somebody that's advising you, someone that's seen it, and I'm fortunate. I barely drink, except for I've got to have my white wine with my sushi. I've got to have my margaritas with my Mexican food. I just love that, and I can't pretty much eat either of those without that bit of alcohol. I'm just being honest. But I've gotten to the point where, as I've gotten older, I don't even enjoy having a drink too much anymore. It just doesn't make me feel good. I'm getting too old. So I'm lucky that I've never really had that addictive personality. I did smoke a little bit, believe it or not, when I was young and in college, when I was managing restaurants. So I know what it's like to feel like it, but I was able to quit literally instantly without having to be weaned off, cigarettes. I think I just did it because I was bored, and I was working in the restaurant business and managing restaurants that everybody was smoking. So it was very easy for me to quit. And obviously with a cancer surviving daughter, I have no interest in anything like that anymore. So I'm lucky, and I do know this. I'm lucky. Listen, I have people I know that have alcoholism. I've known people with drug addiction, successful people with drug addictions. I worry about our country right now with how certain things, I'm just being honest with. I'm not 100% sure that legalizing marijuana is such a great thing. I know it's good for revenue. But I have concerns. I'm just being honest. I don't think we know yet. I think that I will waive my opinion until more stats come in. But I'd like to see what we look like 20 years from now if there's a higher instance of other things or issues. Maybe not. Maybe it could be totally wrong. Maybe there'll be less because it's better than drinking. I don't know. I don't know how all this stuff works. But I have an opinion on it. But I'm getting at is I'm lucky that I think most people in the country don't have this addictive quality, which is what makes it so judgmental for those people that do and makes it so hard on people that have this. More people need to understand that you're not a bad person because your brain happens to be addicted to something or you have that quality. So starting and ending with that, we talked a lot about that with Jason, my buddy. So go back and listen to that episode. But I will say this, if I can scare some of you, if you are leaning toward this or you find you have a problem with this, I'm telling you, get out of healthcare. Get away from that. Remove your access to that. It's a really easy thing to say, right? I'm not addicted. I'll just say just do that. But I'm telling you, it's going to get you. It's almost inevitable. It'll get you at some point, and it could get you in legal trouble, not just career trouble. So if I'm trying to scare some of you, I hope somebody just got scared. I doubt it. I'm not that intimidating. But I hope somebody went, man, I need to maybe think about, before this becomes too far along, removing myself from the temptation. That's what I'm trying to get at. Because what I'm kind of alluded to, and I didn't really finish saying, is that it's almost 100% of the time when somebody has a narcotic issue, I can't think of one time in my entire career that someone has said, this is baloney, this is crap, this isn't true, that they still didn't lose their license. And maybe it wasn't true, but typically you don't lose your license if there's not some sort of documentation. Hospitals, there's just too many things set up to do this. So like I'm saying, when it comes to shortages and lack of documentation on disposal and even just flat out going into the fixed system and getting things out of where you're not supposed to, you're going to get caught and it's going to be a problem and you're going to really hurt potentially more people than just yourself. So what I'm telling you is that it's hard to come out of a state board issue like that unscathed. You're just probably not going to. So take a moment and think about where you are. And again, no judgment by me, but it's going to be a problem for you. And if you guys know somebody that is struggling with this, listen to them. Don't try to fix it. I think we talked with Jason a little while ago. I'm trying to remember our conversation, but his advice was the first thing you shouldn't do is try to go in there and solve the problem. Just listen to them at first and hear what they have to say. If they're willing to talk to you about it at all, I think over time you can start to give advice and help. But at first, the first most important thing is just be a great ear. Listen to somebody without judgment that is struggling with something that is like this, that is struggling with the proximity they have with a narcotic. So I know it's hard for me to have these kinds of episodes because A, I can't truly relate. B, I'm not in that setting. So I hope I'm being okay on this. I hope I'm doing the best I can to kind of get you guys to understand that, listen, the thing I didn't really say, and I want to kind of go into this right now, is that if you have something on a state board, whether it's current, hopefully not, or if it's something that happened in the past and you have, gotten it fixed, let's say, and you've got documentation, please bring it up to your agency right away. I don't think it's fair for you to waste an agency's time. Just like it's not fair for them to be throwing you in front of blind submissions. The same kind of thing applies both ways. It is a two-way street, I've always said. Find an agency that you can explain the situation. If you believe that you are still and you have been able to continue working, then I would not waste my time with a recruiter or an agency that doesn't believe you are worth their time. And we're going to talk about this here in a minute when I talk about, recruiters again. I'm going to do it. I just have to. But that being said, there are too many companies that are willing to listen and are willing to give you a chance to try to see if you can get some things done. Like I said, I've had great travelers who had issues and stabs, even narcotic ones, on their license from years before that they have fixed and changed and have redeemed themselves and gotten their license back reinstated. And they have to go through this every single time they apply to a job and they interview the manager. And the smart ones bring it up. It's not the first thing they talk to the manager about, but they say, hey, by the way, now that you've fallen in love with me and you want me, there is some things I need to address. And here's what happened to me back 10 years ago or 12 years ago or 5 years ago. And here's where I am now. I think candid, forthright, honesty, and upfront goes a long way. There's going to be some people that are going to say, nope, sorry, I can't do it. It's our hospital policy or it's my personal policy. Fine. But you got to address this stuff. You cannot have an agency start to spend money and start to credential you, find this, and then have it go, hey, wait a minute, there's a whole big thing here on me we found. It's going to be really quickly. Matter of fact, a lot of submissions now require a nurses type report or a state board report before you can even be submitted. So the chance of an agency seeing it pretty quickly are going to be pretty fast. But I think it's much better if it comes from you. Just like I think honest things that have to be dealt with from an agency side are better when we tell you up front, which is what I don't think happens too much in our industry. Same thing kind of applies here. You're not going to be able to go to work without this coming up. So you got to bite the bullet. And I'm sorry that you have to do this every time. And I've apologized to people. And I feel bad when they're explaining because I know I'm the 20th person they've explained to it probably this year that they have to go through this process. But they're the ones that made the mistake. And that's part of, I guess, their ability to be able to fulfill and get past it, right? So get past. And if you have this stuff, and you got yourself fixed and you're better, be proud of that. Whether it's clinical or anything else, be proud of the fact that you are a different person now and have that be who you are and have that be what defines you, not what is you, if that makes sense. It has to be what makes you who you are, not what defines you. So have that be the case. All right. I want to talk a little bit about NextGen MedStaff on those lines, about recruitings and that sort of things. Here's what I'll tell you. First of all, I think I should be saying Happy New Year because I think by the time this episode, is released, we are going to be into 2023. It's been such a fun ride. It was in the very beginnings of 2020 that I started to have the thoughts and ideas about what we wanted to do with a new agency. And it's been a very wonderful and fulfilling ride. Certainly, I will tell you this. I'll admit this to everybody out there. It's taken us longer than I thought. I don't think that's unusual. I think everyone thinks things can be done quicker than they are. I mean, just the development of the app itself was incredibly difficult for such an easy concept. There's a lot of moving parts to it, which is crazy. I've had people every day saying, well, what'd you do? Because I know other companies are interested in this sort of thing. I just know that they are. And this is why I tell you guys I'm convinced that in 5 years there won't be recruiters in our industry. Very few. Maybe certain specialties like nurse practitioners or nurse anesthetists or something very unusual. But I'm telling you, the majority of staffing companies that do allied and nursing, there won't be recruiters because we don't need them. And it's costing you money to have them. And I'll keep saying that till people start going, he's right. And I've had these conversations online. Here's what I want to say about my transition. And we're going to go again. Like I said, I started documenting 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago in March. I started documenting every week of what happened. And I'm looking forward to telling you where I was 3 years ago because I'm not telling you where I am now because I don't want my competitors to know. But I can tell you where I was 3 years ago, and I want you guys to hear and see what we were thinking and why we are trying to completely disrupt this industry for the better, not to make things more difficult. We think that things should be easier for you. I don't have a problem with people that are recruiters, and I get that a lot. You don't like recruiters? No, I don't like. I think they're unnecessary. Doesn't mean they're not good people. There are tons of great recruiters in our industry and really wonderful people, and I hope that they last in this industry as long as they possibly can. But if I am a good person, I'm a recruiter, and I'm listening to this, I'm already know that I've got to figure out how to move in a different direction within the company hopefully I love working for into a different role. And I would get out of recruiting even though it's lucrative as it is, and it is really, really lucrative for some people. And it's coming off of the amount of money that should be going to you, and just the way it just truthfully is. I don't have a problem with recruiters. I want that to be very clear. I think they're good people. I have a problem with the lack of efficiency, and effectiveness that a recruiter can have. Here's a great example. I'll put it this way. When I first got into this concept, we were focused completely on the income that NextGen would be able to pay travelers higher than every other agency because we didn't have this expense, which is still true. Clearly, when the pandemic hit, with these $200 bill rates, our difference was really astronomical. You could see it very, very clearly. We were at a little bit higher than we are now. I told you guys we're going to keep going down in our margins, and we've fulfilled that promise. But even back then, our rates were so much higher than the few contracts we had. Remember, we didn't have a lot of contracts back then. So I had people saying, well, this contract pays more than you have. Well, I didn't have it. So yeah, it pays more because I don't have it. If I had it, we'd be paying more because our margins were thinner. It's pretty straightforward. I still get that sometimes on Facebook. This is a terrible rate. I'm seeing rates higher than this. Not at that hospital. You're not for that particular assignment. Guarantee you're not because we have the lowest margins out there. It's just the way it is. That was what we designed. That being said, as time has gone by and the total bill rates have plummeted to almost half of what they were, let's be frank, a year and a half ago. What I'm realizing now, and what I didn't really think about 3 years ago, was the efficiency of a recruiter. Because there's some really good ones out there. And there are really good ones for a lot of you, because a lot of you are very well informed. You guys get the jobs you're looking for. You're very high in the traveler marketability area, which means you make them commission fast, and typically you make them a lot of money. If you are a high specialized traveler, the higher the bill rate, typically, the more a recruiter is going to make commission off of you. In other words, if you're a high-risk labor and delivery nurse, you're going to generate more commission for a recruiter than, let's say, a labor and delivery surgical technician that specializes in C-sections or episiotomies. That's just the facts. It's going to be about double. So what I'm getting at is if you are that surge tech, you should know that recruiter, you're lower on their list of priorities for the day. I hate to be blunt, but you are, because you make them less money. Now, there's a lot of factors involved. If you get jobs faster, you're going to go up in that list. If you're a high-risk L&D nurse, but you're really picky and you're not available for a while and you only want to go to certain states, you're going to be lower on that list. That's what recruiters do all day long. So what is crazy to me is on a weekend or at 5:01 p.m. and that agency's closed for the day, you're not getting any job notifications unless you yourself go onto some sort of social media and search it, which means you're being your own recruiter. You're looking for a post on a labor and delivery, in this case, job board. That's the job you're looking for. You're looking to see when it was posted, when the job is, and all the different information. You're recruiting yourself. It's an app. It just happens to be on a platform. It's not really an app. It's a human-based meme that you're putting out there, or a PDF that someone threw on a site. You're recruiting yourself. But what I've realized is that an efficient app that literally updates constantly, both new jobs and jobs as they're closing, which is just as important, is so much more effective. You're not waiting for Monday or the next day and hoping that you're high on that particular recruiter's list of priorities for the day, that you're going to hear about that job right away, because you and I both know it could take hours or sometimes even days for that recruiter to finally say, okay, I've gotten through everything. I've got nothing else to work on. Let me go ahead and get to my next thing that I don't think this person's never worked for me before, or they don't get jobs as easily, or they're, don't have as much commission based on their bill rate. I'll now text them or call them and see what happens. That's just truth. Prove me wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that you're the number one priority for every recruiter out there. You're not. Somebody's in front of you almost every time, which means you're wasting time waiting for someone to contact you, or you're doing the one searching, whereas an app literally will give you a notification, ding, there it is, and now you've got full details of a job. And that's the other thing I want to say. I guess I am trying to pitch this company right now, but I am telling you this. An app should tell you everything you need to hear and see instantly. You shouldn't have to send in resumes and paperwork and do all this jumping through hoops to see a job. If a company is proud of what we're paying, and we are, you should be able to see that instantly and be able to say, wow, that looks pretty good. Once you apply, and I will tell you this about our app because a lot of people are a little confused about this, but once you hit the apply button on our app, then we're going to ask you for resume and a skills checklist and some other quick 2 pieces of information is all we really need. Once we have that, you're good to go. You can apply every time. But we obviously can't submit you if we don't have the paperwork to submit you. And I get it all the time. I get people applying, and they when they all keep applying, like, hey, we got to get paperwork. We can't put you in front of a job because we say, hey, this is a really great person. This is a really great, let's say, RN, and we really like them. We don't even know their number. We knew their number. We know their number and their email. But we need the paperwork. So I think it's important that you don't have to do that until you see a job that you like. Too many companies, if not all of them besides ours that I know of, require you to send in information before you get access to complete full rates. And I think that's garbage. I don't think it makes sense. Again, efficiency for both you as well. Why would you waste your time if you don't even know what a company's going to pay? If you can see what a company's going to pay and you go, wow, that's better than anybody else's, I'm going to go with them, that makes sense. So we put a lot of thought behind this. But what I'm getting at is that as time's gone by, I've gone from the pay being the most important to now I think the speed in which you can be submitted and to apply to a position is almost more important, because that's money too. If you're missing jobs or you're not getting submitted fast to them, that's probably costing you more than just the difference between a rate from one company to the other, even as good as ours is. So I like the fact you can go in front of a job quickly, but I also love the fact that once you get there, you're going to be the top paid person in your unit based upon the bill rate at the time that you were offered, and hopefully anybody else. So typically anybody who's in your orientation, you should be top paid. I can't control what the bill rate was before. I can't control what it is after, but I can control the fact that we should be the top paid based upon that particular bill rate every time. So I don't know. Money is important, but efficiency, I mean, my gosh, it like I said, it is 2023 now. And the industry is still relying upon either recruiters to inform them and then tell them what they're going to make, or it's actually now, I think it's shifting to where you guys are searching out and finding the jobs and telling your recruiter, hey, company XYZ has this job at this place paying this. Can you guys match it or beat it? You're doing the app's job. You're doing your own job. And you're still sacrificing a huge chunk of income to pay for that recruiter through that company. It makes 0 sense. Our whole industry hasn't made sense for a long time, but obviously we had to have the technology for it to really not make sense, and we have it now. It's here. So I didn't want to ever talk about our company, but it gets in my craw, and it just makes people are starting to get it. First of all, we're booming. I understand why. We're actually growing faster than I thought we would at this stage. We haven't even had our app out on iTunes and Google Play for a year yet. It'll be a year I think April and May for Google, or for Android and iTunes respectively, or the other way around. It hasn't even been a year yet. It's been like 7-8 months, and people are starting to see it. The wonderful thing about our app is that you can have it. You can still be working with recruiters, but you can see trends, you can see pay rates, you can see openings and closures. If you really want to be in a certain place and you never see a job with us, it doesn't mean they're not there. It just means that maybe we don't have it, but the likelihood of there being a huge amount of positions there is less. As time goes by, we're gaining more and more contracts. We're getting more and more affiliations with different vendors, different partnerships. So Our goal now is to continue to grow and facilitate and get more and more positions, because we know darn well if we've got that job, it's going to pay more and you're going to hear about it a lot quicker. So, all right, back to licensure issues, and I'll end the episode. Guys, this is a tough one. That's why I filled in some stuff with NextGen MedStaff, because I just didn't have a lot to really say, except for, like I said early on, don't do stupid stuff. Be careful, be aware. This is your career. If something you're going to do could ruin your career, pause. Have that moment of, oh my gosh, what am I about to do? And don't do it. I know it's an easy thing to say, but listen to the rest of the stuff we talked about in this episode. Listen to your peers really heavily on this. Get some advice, get some counseling, get some help. And if it's clinical, get some help in that regard too. Get some mentoring going, like we talked about a little while ago. Get some people that can help you be a better healthcare professional to avoid having issues with a state board for clinical reasons too. Guys, I appreciate it. I hope this episode was okay. I feel a little weird about the two things we talked about because I don't normally do this. We'll get back to some good stuff next week. I'm going to have some great guests coming on, so stay tuned. I really appreciate your subscriptions. I hope you guys appreciate my honesty and my candor, because this is the only way I know how to talk. And go to nextgenmedstaff.com and check out our app. Just download it. It's free. It doesn't hurt to have it. I would appreciate it. Let us know what you think. Give us some feedback on our website. Give us some feedback on our information. Tell us what you do and don't like about it. Help us make it better, because we're constantly working on it. Guys, I appreciate it. I'll catch you next time on Travel Evolved.